Meta is doing this not for the prediction piece, which is growing. It's for the how do I keep more people on our platform that's tapping into something that's popular, but using the massive machine that Meta is to suck up more ad dollars. It's almost like cartoonish. The next investment they're making is in a literal gambling platform. It feels kind of funny given all of the lawsuits.
You're listening to Media Monitor, where we break down what's happening in the media and the advertising industry and tell you what it actually means. Welcome back, Sean.
Welcome back, Kelly. How are you?
I am good. I'm going to ask a question I feel like I already know the answer to. Did you watch the USA game last night?
You know the answer to this, and the answer is no. I had a good reason. I was at a child's swim meet until late, and so that was kind of the entire evening. But
Understood.
even if it wasn't, I wouldn't have watched.
I mean, I get it. This last night's game, while they did suffer a loss, was not for anything. They've already kind of won their group and they're moving on. So
Sure.
I guess it doesn't matter, but I did enjoy one of the commercials, which featured, yes.
This is now getting closer to my wheelhouse, commercials, advertising.
Yes.
Sure, so go on.
I'm speaking your language. So I feel like I'm rarely surprised in commercials lately. Like I kind of know who the brand is. I kind of know what's going on, but it was a pretty long format commercial, definitely like at least 30 seconds. And it featured, I'm going to say Kanye, but an older, it was a Kanye at the time. It featured,
Sure.
That's Runaway. So I'm gripped and I'm just watching, trying to figure out who it is. And it's Polymarket.
Crazy. I've heard Kalshi has also been going crazy with advertising on these sports games.
Yes.
Of late.
Yes.
And TikTok.
Yes.
Yeah.
Blowing up. And so before we get into our topic for the day, which, spoiler alert, we're going to talk prediction markets and those that run ads and how they're pacing and those that don't and what that might mean. I figured we do our headlines like we've done, but one of them happens to be related to this. So Meta this week announced that they are kind of going to break into the space. They did this a little bit in 2020. They launched, it was called Forecast, and it was essentially trying to kind of have people crowdsource and place bets-ish on what was going on with the global pandemic. Went away. It wasn't successful. But this week, they announced a new standalone project. So it's not publicly available yet. It's called Arena, and they're getting into the prediction space. It's not for dollars. So it's a points-based system to kind of skirt all the regulations. But it'll be interesting to see what they do. It caught my eye. I feel like, one of the things that Meta does is they copy people. And they end up being pretty good at it. And here they are again. Which is, again, to me, more interesting. We're not going to cover it in today's episode, but like the ever-changing face of Meta is like, okay, when they renamed to Meta to try to be all in on the metaverse, and that didn't really go as planned. And then they tried a hard pivot to AI, and it seems like their most recent models haven't been up to snuff. They tried Threads, which by some accounts is successful, by some it's not. So it is interesting given their recent track record is like, are they rapidly becoming maybe not a one-hit wonder, because they did Facebook and that was, a smash hit. And then they acquired Instagram, which is still arguably probably one of the most popular, social media sites. So like they had a good track record, but of late it seems like they are making some interesting bets, if you will, pun intended. We'll see where it goes. But yeah, it'll be interesting because if you think like Threads, I mean, obviously, I'm saying obviously, it's clearly not performing on its own because of how much of the crossover you see.
Exactly.
I'm holding strong. I haven't downloaded it, but there are times when I want to click in, but I just can't get over that hurdle.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the big critique of it, right? Is that it is successful because it's kind of like it's forcing stuff within the own existing ecosystem today, which is already massively large. But like as a standalone product, it doesn't seem to be doing all that well. So just yeah, interesting thing there. And we're not going to talk about it, but my headline is coming off of the last couple of conversations that you and I have had about AI weariness, maybe, or maybe there's like diverging paths in the market around AI. Mine is that OpenAI has rumored to be pushing back their IPO launch amid uncertainty among kind of the AI giants of when to go public, what it might mean for their business. And I've heard concurrently that they're also switching their kind of ad model over to cost per click, CPCs. That onto itself is not necessarily kind of correlated, but it is just an interesting, these are things that are all happening at the same time. We've covered that the ad spend is growing, but the actual dollar amounts that we're seeing are less than we would expect. So like how much this tells us about the internal mechanisms of their business, I'm not sure, but it is right. Not there's no fire yet, but there's more smoke in terms of a lot of the
Yeah.
conversations we're seeing. So was interested in kind of the New York Times covering that. I think it was yesterday, not at the time we're recording, not yesterday as in when people hear this. So,
And as
which would be
always,
super cool.
we'll link our articles that
Yep.
we're mentioning so that you can dig in deeper and want to just keep you in the loop on our pulse. And speaking of pulse updates, before we get into the content, I have to let everybody know I am still in third place in my family World Cup pool. Thanks, Aunt
Not bad.
B, for administering this pool. She says she's using AI, but I think she's putting a lot of hard work in there, and I am still in third. Can't believe it.
Good job, Aunt B, and good
Yeah,
job
like I'm
for you
actually doing
for
anything.
yeah, nailing it.
Yes.
We talked before. We'll make this a regular occurrence up until you're either out or the World Cup is over. Because that's
That's
I
right.
think to keep the everyone informed at home.
Yeah, we're kicking out. We're going to those knockout rounds, and we
I should have
gotta.
kept with the kicking it. Then that way you could have done the whole pun thing.
Oh yeah, I know I messed up.
You missed it.
Well, you already like nailed the puns.
Well, I
Like,
figured that could be like a theme of our show. It's like how do we one up each other on puns?
all right, I'll keep that in mind. All right. So let's get to prediction markets. And
Yeah.
so, like, this ecosystem has evolved dramatically in the last, call it 5 years. And so, what we wanted to do today was just highlight what we're seeing in our data around prediction markets, kind of talk about where they got their start, how they've evolved. We didn't call them prediction markets back in the day. It was very focused on sports betting. And so we want to talk about who's running ads, what that looks like, how it's growing, and what we think the future will hold. So
Yeah.
I'm going to kick it to you, Sean. What have you seen?
Yeah. So I think just to like kick things off, where we started was like after reading the article about Arena, you and I were like, "Hi, I wonder," and we were live talking of like, is there actual ad spend that's against any of these platforms? Because it's like a unique way in, right? There's a lot of conversation happening right now on kind of the betting markets, and so I was like, let me just look at what we've got, at least in the U.S., and it turns out it's not an insignificant amount of money. In 2025, there was around $50 million in other advertisers advertising on these betting kind of markets high level, and actually even in our system, which I didn't realize, under kind of a certain dimension you can filter for all gambling websites and like apps,
Mm,
content, etc. So like there's even a way for us to kind of easily access this, which I probably should have known. But anyway, so we dug into it and it's like it's 50 million bucks in 2025, which is not nothing. I was
that's not chump
truly not
change.
expecting it. Yeah, and just for clarity too, the at least the platforms that we can see are all kind of the sports gambling ones. So it's FanDuel, DraftKings, Roto. It's those players. It's not necessarily like Polymarket, Kalshi, the like quote unquote prediction markets. Which I always thought was pretty funny because it's like they're not really they're like it's the betting market for just anything that you want to place a bet on kind of thing. It's like the stuff of like when you were with your friends and you're like a buck says you can't do this, or like a buck says
Yes.
this is going to happen, right? It's like
Well,
I feel like that
so
they took that
it's
concept and then they built an entire business on it.
And it's so funny that, like, I didn't think of this sooner because so, I mention my husband a lot on this show. He's sports guy, loves like we're not talking big sums of money, but he's placing bets on games.
Yeah.
And my gateway drug to this was the prop bets.
Yeah.
Like the thing that I thought was the most fun was what color Gatorade are they, pouring over someone's head at the end of the Super Bowl? And so I think someone was like, huh, maybe there's something to this.
Yeah.
this is my hypothesis for how it all began, but like
Sure.
it's way more fun in
Yeah.
my
I
opinion.
mean, well, because it's sort of random, sort of wild. My exposure to it, as we had talked about, was I was a big kind of 538 politics podcast. Nate Silver doing his predictions, and he would always, because the Polymarket stuff was largely available in the UK much earlier than in the
Hmm.
United States. It's a much more established business. You have um, a lot more kind of sports gambling that's legal and everything over there. And he would often refer to them as the Scottish teens, almost as a joke, or I think it was maybe Claire Malone on the podcast. Doesn't matter. But the kind of running joke was that like these prediction markets were just a bunch of teenagers just like throwing money against random stuff. But it turns out that they were actually like pretty good at predicting outcomes, because it's the law of the crowds. If you source enough opinions about kind of commonplace topics, it turns out that they tend to be pretty predictive. They've done tests on this for cows' weights, all of those things. So
Hmm.
a bit of a detour, but that was kind of both the exposure that I had to it, kind of going up into the 2016 elections. But it is something that is growing gangbusters here in the U.S. What's interesting is you look at a lot of these companies, and kind of the average revenue growth for them is about 17-ish% year over year from kind of a
Okay.
total top line revenue. But one of the interesting things that I wanted to dig into that I thought was relevant for this podcast is the ad revenue growth is growing at 41% year over year.
Wow.
And from like a CAGR, compound annual growth rate, it's actually, closer to like 45% over the last 5-ish years. So this is clearly, which I thought was interesting in kind of the Meta hook, right? Because like Meta's basically taking about a third of all of advertising's growth in globally, right? Like about a third of budgets globally are going to Meta at this point, which
Yeah.
is just bananas, right? And so it's like, is the play here actually to siphon off more ad dollars in a unique and different way, or maybe gamify it? Or so the hook that I thought was like, okay, like if they aren't going to be doing this pure gambling model like the other ones that are out there, is this actually just more a bigger play for even more ad dollars? And my hunch is like that's actually the sweet sauce, given where we're seeing a
100.
lot of the growth here. And more fascinating to me is like, for a long time, all of these platforms, or in real life, right? Like they were considered to be places you didn't want to run advertising, right? Because they were kind of like sketchy. They were maybe less kind of in your face.
Yes.
And what's interesting is going back to our core data, right? Like we work with agencies who represent the world's largest brands who are deeply concerned around brand safety and
Brand
where their
safety.
brands go. And $45 million is no small change for folks that are maybe less concerned, or at least at this point don't feel like these betting markets are no longer, or are like are maybe brand safe now, or at least like brand adjacent to safe, which is to me actually
It-
the more fascinating thing in the growth
well,
story here.
hence the rebrand, right? Like
Yeah,
gambling, betting, negative connotation,
yeah.
predictions.
Predictions, great.
I'm just hypothesizing,
I'm a
like
futurist.
that's brand safe, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, right? Like it's fascinating. And so like yeah, like I was like, "Whoa, this is a pretty interesting take, given that that's not where I would have expected the numbers to land." And it's also, I mean, sort of to be expected, but sort of different. The single largest category here is alcohol beverages investing. They're probably about 15-20% of all spend in the sports gambling space. But again, from a caveat, they are not 15 to 20% of the entire market. They're more like
Right.
7 to 8. So they're obviously overinvested here. And more interestingly, their CAGR in this space has been growing about 30% year over year for the past 4 or 5 years, whereas the whole market, I think it was about 1% growth. So there's also like a clear strategy shift on their part of like, well, we can still actually be in sports, but a fraction of the cost. So we've actually seen their kind of live sports spend start to dissipate over the last couple of years. They've kind of just flattened it. So they're not growing, they're not declining. It's essentially just the same investment year over year. But clearly they still want to be in sports, but they found a cheaper, more interesting
Yep.
avenue through this sports betting angle.
They said, what goes better with a bet than a beer, right?
Nailed it. You should go and maybe pitch them. See,
Should I go into advertising?
the advertising. Yeah. You've got your tagline. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I knew
N-
something good was going to happen
It's
today.
your calling. Yeah.
Well, okay, so alcohol, that makes total sense. Any other notable categories?
much less so,
Mm.
but quick serve restaurants, fast food type places are also massive investors in the platform. What's interesting is that we're just about halfway through 2026, and they've already invested basically 1.2 times their total investment of 2025. So this is clearly a strategy shift for them as well, where their total investment basically has eclipsed a full year in just around 5 months of our data. So there's
Mm.
clearly a strategy shift there. Same thing with telco, wireless kind of phones, etc. Is they are massively shifting dollars as well. They spent about $7 million this year. Sorry, last year on just sports betting, which again is pretty interesting because the last couple of years they've been at like 3 million. So they kind of doubled down last year, which I thought was interesting as well.
So it sounds like the playbook for who's advertising very closely aligns to live sports, with the exception maybe of autos, because I feel like that's a powerhouse. Although we've been talking about the decline in
Yeah,
that space.
auto has been kind of muted this year.
Yeah.
Total that we're seeing is like 25 grand for the year so far. Last year was a lot more. Last year was in the millions of dollars, but like 25 grand, it feels like more of like a test type budget from like 5 years ago of like, oh, I'll just spend a little bit money
Yeah.
to see what my ROAS is, and then it's like, oh yeah, it's not that. So it feels kind of silly, but they are kind of dead last this year in terms of investment.
Wow. So, okay. And then, I mean, what this says to me, and I'm no like corporate strategist for these prediction market companies, is that there's definitely money to be made if you run ads on your platform. So,
100%.
I'm guessing that we're going to see more ads emerge for those who aren't running ads today, or more types of ad units from those who are serving them today. Would
Yeah.
your line there?
Yeah, for sure, right? And that's also like the take that I have for the Meta announcement is that like Meta is doing this not for the prediction piece, which is growing. It's for the how do I keep more people on our platform that's
Hmm.
tapping into something that's popular, but using the massive machine that Meta is to suck up more ad dollars is like my bet on where they go with this. I can only do it twice. It
That's
feels
it. Yeah.
yeah.
You you've maxed out on that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, and I can't
Yeah.
even use prediction at this point. That would be exhausting.
Well, the other thing is like time and platform, because like, going back to my family pool, I'm looking at odds and how they change.
Yeah.
And I had Ghana in the Ghana England game, and there was a 12 when I looked, there was a 12% odds that it was going to be a tie. That's what the outcome ended up being, but I kept kind of like checking back to see
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I thought I was definitely gonna lose that game,
Yeah.
but then I ended up getting, in our point structure, 1 point for a tie.
Yeah, well, it's also fascinating, right? Because like the further out you go, right, there's odds, and then as you get closer, they change, right, and then eventually it locks.
Yeah.
But like, it's also addicting to kind of go back and be like, okay, well, I'm gonna place a long shot bet at like maybe my odds are like 1 to 600 or something, and then as you get closer, maybe those odds are you're like, oh no, 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 like they're evening out. Maybe it's like a dead heat. So like there is also to your point this like reoccurring, like you want to go back into the platform to check. So it's not just like a one and
Exactly.
done. It's not like I'm only there like once a month. Like if I'm in there and I play something, I'm going to go on to, go in and check on it. Not even on day of, right? To your point, you're like, you go in, you keep checking. And then day of, you're probably refreshing every 6 seconds. So yeah,
Yep.
there is that behavioral element, which, is addicting and all of those things, etc. But like also, I think part of like Meta's core competency of like how to build an app that keeps people coming back, right? I think like Meta probably
Mhm.
pioneered a lot of that in like the early aughts around like how you get people to keep coming back. You play around, you poke from back in the day, and then like you build, right? So I feel
Well,
like
and that's what, Instagram's scroll model was
yeah.
built after. It's slot machines,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's just yeah, it's the addictive, and like that's what a lot of the lawsuits that recently came up was that it's just so addictive that like it's purposely designed to keep you on platform.
Yep.
So like in some ways it's almost like cartoonish that like the next investment they're making is in a literal like gambling platform to keep you engaged. It's like uh, it feels kind of funny given all of the lawsuits and the commentary, and they're like, no, we're not that. And then it's like, oh well, what's your next big idea? And it's like just straight up gambling.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love it.
So bold.
Well, I just can't wait to log in and start placing some bets this weekend. You've inspired me. I think I'm gonna.
Oh, no, 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 no. No, please don't say I inspired you. If anything goes wrong, I do not want to be in that mix. No inspiration.
Fair. No, you didn't inspire me. You have
Reminded you,
led a
maybe?
healthy conversation around a topic, and I will wager a responsible amount of money one time.
That's good. I have bet once in my life, and I realized how quickly it could go downhill. I was at a horse track, and I was like, all
Hmm.
right, I'm only going to spend like $50. I blew $50 in the first 3 minutes, and I was like, well, I can't just be here for the next 2 hours and not bet. This is so like there was some mistakes, nothing or detrimental to my financial situation for sure, but there definitely was. I was like, wow, okay, I get it. Like, and then like the first time I won, man, it's like, well, now I need to go back because I'm gonna win it all back. I didn't win it all back,
No.
but man, yeah.
Learned your lesson.
I learned my lesson. So one and done for me.
Well, I think we should, on that,
I think it's a great stopping point.
call it an episode. Always a
that's a
pleasure,
good call.
Sean.
You as well. See you next week.
All right, later.
Bye. That's Media Monitor. Follow us and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts every Wednesday for a new episode. And as always, thanks for listening.